It's a collection of highways that connect you from the top to the bottom of the Americas. And the Pan America Highway, it's actually not one road. It's a bunch of highways. So if you look, this is the picture that was actually sent to me in the text. And I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. But, how does this going to work? But in the U.S., it's more loose, right? Because you can get from the top to the bottom of the U.S. in many different ways. And then at the bottom of Argentina, it's a little bit loose. But basically, the whole gist of it is going from the top to the bottom. And it doesn't necessarily matter exactly which highway as long as you're able to do that. And people take different variations of it. But that's the Pan America Highway. I had never heard of it before getting this text.
Me either. I probably heard about it, I want to say about maybe 2-3 years ago. Before then, I didn't know it. I didn't believe there was no such highway would take you all the way across both Americas. Well, North, Central, and South America.
Yeah. No, when I think about Mexico, South America, Costa Rica, Panama, you jump on a plane, you go there for vacation or holiday and come back. So it's not a place that I've ever thought I could drive to or ride to. And quite frankly, when I'm there, usually it's very enclosed, right? You're on a resort. And outside of, a tour that you might go to, I didn't even think about what it was like or what it would be like. So when I was thinking about the Pan American Highway in my mind, I was like, there's got to be, do I remember any of the roads, like what the roads look like? And I couldn't really come up with that.
And also in a bunch of Holiday Inn Express sitting on the side of the road. So obviously it's a whole lot different issue with lodging and stuff like that, whether it's hostels or Airbnbs or.
It really depends on where you're at. That in some places you may find some, especially if you're going into the capital cities. So if you're going into major cities, and I'm going to start talking about Mexico, but Monterrey, Mexico City, you're going to find everything that you find in the U.S. So it's when you start veering out of those big cities and it's the in-betweens that you start to struggle to find places to stay. And not necessarily struggle, you just got to open your mind to different types of places to stay. But if you go to the next slide, let me jump into.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Let's see.
Oh, I don't think that was the next one. But
okay.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yep.
That was the next one?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good to go.
All right. So for today, I put together a presentation. And in this presentation, I'm going to break it up into kind of two pieces. One is the preparation. How did I prepare for this? Knowing that I never heard of the Pan America Highway prior to that text hitting me. And then I'm going to talk about the journey and, how I went about the journey, what I saw, what I felt, and what I learned along that journey. And then I'll open it up for questions. But I mean, hey, if you have questions while we're going, I'm sure Sarge will pop them in.
Oh yeah, we'll do it. If you got questions, just shoot them on the put them in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. If you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So the first part is the preparation. So remember, I told you I had no idea about this whole Pan America Highway, and so I started to do some research. I have Harleys, and mostly I ride, and at this point, only my Road Glide. So I was chit-chatting with my local dealer, and he's like, oh yeah, Harley's coming out with an adventure motorcycle. It should come out in like March or something like that. So I took the opportunity. I said, hey, and they're calling it the Pan America. So obviously, I'm like, okay, Pan America motorcycle for the Pan America Highway. You got to do it. But I had no idea that any of this existed. So what he did is recommended that I watch The Long Way Up, Charlie Borman, or I don't know, Long Way Up. So if you've watched videos or you're looking at other people doing the Pan America Highway, you can take a look at that. But I watched videos, so I immediately watched the Long Way Up, and I watched Itchy Boots, and then I kept Googling Pan America Highway because I didn't know what else to Google.
Can I say this? You know, when I was preparing for this podcast show, you know, obviously, you know, I do my homework as well, but that Itchy Boots, that's got to be the craziest white girl I've ever seen in my life. She is, yeah, she does some of the crazy things. So I know if you learned a lot of stuff from her material, I know she took you down some paths. Did you think, wow, am I going to have to deal with that?
And that, well, yes and no, right? So the first thing I always do is I pick up my phone and I dial A to B.
Oh, okay.
So, or I search A to B in the Google Maps, and I'm like, okay, where she is not where I'm going to be.
Okay.
But still, she's a woman riding through this area that I want to ride. She's riding all back roads.
Yeah, all back roads. I mean,
I think it's a Honda 250.
Yes, a 250. Yeah, yeah.
And I knew that definitely wasn't going to be my ride. So at least I didn't think so, because I haven't gotten to the point yet where I've got a bike yet. I'm still just researching, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. So I'm doing more researching. So I start looking up maps, videos, tours, any and everything I can look up to get a better understanding of the what this looked like, and if it was even doable. Because at this point, it says Pan America Highway, but I'm still not sure that this is something that I can do. So if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
One thing I absolutely knew after the research was that I would not be comfortable riding this bike South America, because all of the YouTubers, anybody that posted anything on the Pan America Highway, most of it I saw was dirt roads or very small roads or hard passes to get through. So this is when I decided I needed to really get a new bike. And if you go to the next one, I think I already said this, but I mean, it just made sense to have the Pan America bike for the Pan America Highway. So I bought this bike September 21. It's a 2021 Harley Davidson 1250 Special. And I test rode the bike. When I test rode the bike, I was immediately intimidated because the bike is so tall. But I'm like, okay, people are doing it, so I must be able to do it. And I'm a pretty competent rider. I'm not going to say I'm the best, but I'm pretty competent. I think I can do it. So I rode the bike probably at least 10,000 miles before it touched any dirt, gravel, any off-road. And the first time I tried to do that, get in the dirt or off-road, I was shaking. I was scared to death. So I knew that I also needed to have some training. But I didn't know where to go for training, because this bike, I called this bike an enduro. And when I was talking to my dealership, I told them I need an enduro bike. I see BMW has enduros, but I guess enduro might be like the old school name of the bike.
Yeah, that's what they used to call them back in the day. I think they used to call them like in the 70s, 80s, enduro bikes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm calling. I'm like, oh yeah, I got an enduro.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't know that I was supposed to like Google adventure or adventure bikes and those types of things. I had no idea that there were training courses just for off-road or adventure bike riding. So I was I talked to my dealer. What Harley did when they introduced these bikes is they took a couple people from each one of their dealerships and took them to California for training. So they just did I don't know, it was a few weeks at a time. They did training, how to operate the bikes, how to service the bikes, those types of things. So then my dealer, who was one of the BT, who was one of the folks who visited or did the training and actually hurt himself, he's the one who told me, hey, Rawhide has a training course out there. So then I Googled Rawhide to figure out if I can go to get some training, and I booked training. So if you go to the next slide. So this is me. This is a BMW training. But there happen to be, I think, 2 Pan Americas there. Remember, they're still new. This is in 21.
And where was this at now?
This is in California, between Bakersfield and LA.
Very nice.
It's called Rawhide. And at this point, this is the only training, off-road training or adventure training class or course that I knew of. Like, I was Googling, but I don't think I had the right search words for it. So I did this class. Now, with this class, it was pretty cool because I learned a lot and I became a whole lot more confident. There was, I was nervous as heck when I showed up because I'm like, do I even belong here? Most of the people, again, were on BMWs, a bunch of, I'm going to call them white males, between 50, 60-year-old, and even the owner of Rawhide, Jim Hyde, said that's the normal demographic of people who were riding adventure motorcycles. So I was not comfortable, and I actually thought about quitting. Like, you know what, maybe I'll just go somewhere else because there was no one that looked like me. It was supposed to be a women's class, and they didn't have enough women to show up,
Wow.
so then it was all men.
But I could imagine, if you don't mind, I could imagine when you said that demographic, I could imagine, because obviously people are doing adventure biking, you're probably talking about people who have kids or grown or pretty close to grown. People kind of have a little bit more latitude as far as PTO on their jobs. And the most important thing, MONEY.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
And then that's what they said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here I am, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. But this guy, one of the trainers that worked for Rawhide, he doesn't work for Rawhide anymore. He works here in Austin, and I'm actually going to join him for an event coming up soon, Touratech Rally. But this guy came over to me, and he's like, you belong here. And I know Harleys because nobody else wanted to touch a Harley. And he goes, hey, look at this. And he adjusted my levers so that I can stand up on the bike properly and have the right angles. And he helped me get through that because him actually recognizing that I felt like I didn't belong in this place. And then him saying, hey, I know Harleys. We've done this. We did the training. So that was helpful, and that was a confidence builder. And the reason I point that out is because usually when we're getting ready to do something wild and crazy, we go ask somebody who's done it. I had nobody to ask because I didn't know anyone at that point who did it.
Yeah, that's true. YouTube was your friend. I can guarantee that. Probably.
Oh my gosh! If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So I had fun. This was my thing. Every day after work, or every day, I was on YouTube. I was Googling whatever I can do. So I Googled this, how to prepare for an adventure or, Pan America Highway. And there's this guy. He's pretty cool. He's got on shorts and he's jumping up and down, and he jumps, and then he's got these adventure boots on. I'm like, okay, I need adventure boots. Then he jumps again. He's got this adventure jacket on. I'm like, okay, I need adventure jacket. So each time he's jumping, I'm like Googling, like, okay, and I'm looking at reviews because this stuff is expensive.
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering, is that where we get the jump from?
No.
Your signature jump move?
No, I had the jump before then.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No.
Okay. So I'm seeing a Garmin,
Yep.
and I think on your ride there's no substitute. You know, we do our Yonder rides when we're in America or United States. Typically, we can get away with a cell phone
Mhm.
as far as our GPS equipment. That ain't happening where you were going. Am I correct?
Yeah, right. But
Okay.
well, you can. I mean, there's adventure riders.
Uh,
There's some adventure riders like bougie adventure riders who need all of this. But then there's
yeah.
some. I'm going to call them Hoka since we
Yeah.
just saw the Hoka riders who are like, we don't need any of this stuff.
Wow.
So I needed it.
Okay.
Let
So if
me
you
let
don't,
me.
well,
Mhm.
are we gonna break down the equipment?
Yep.
Okay, let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. So from a bike standpoint, there's hard bags and soft bags. And if you ask adventure riders, you're going to get probably a 50-50 split about which ones are better. I bought hard bags right off the bat. I was traveling solo. Or I was planning to travel solo because I've asked a few people if they wanted to ride with me, but this ain't no, hey, I'm riding to the corner store ride. This is, hey, we're going to take a few months and go do some things. So to do that, I wanted to make sure that all of my stuff was safe. Obviously, if you got a thief, it's not all safe, but for the casual folks, it is safe. So I went with the hard bags. I own soft bags as well, and I never put them on my bike. Um, from a boot standpoint, or from an adventure gear standpoint, the guy that was doing the jumping, he recommended some boots, and I have some. Right now, I'm wearing CDs, but in this, I forget which ones they are. Toucan sevens. But when I did training, the bike fell on my foot with these boots on, and I couldn't move. Like I was in a position that if I turned my body one way or another, my my foot would or my ankle would crack. So I'm
Wow.
laying there, and a guy picks the bike off me, and I stand up. I don't have a bruise. Nothing's broken. I can't even tell that the whole weight of that bike was laying on my ankle. So those are the boots that I chose. Those are the boots that I rode on my tour. And then there's
Now
the
those boots, they're designed for to be able to protect your shins, your ankles,
mhm.
obviously your
And
toes
they're
and your
really
heels.
really thick plastic.
Yeah.
Most of them are waterproof.
Does
Um,
Alpine make that boot?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Alpine.
that's the Alpine boot. Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
Alpine Toucan 7.
Okay.
But it looks big and goofy, so I don't like wearing them when I'm
It
wearing
does look
my
big.
other
Yeah,
bike.
they look huge.
But now with that bike falling on my ankle, I know I'll never ride my bike without them again.
So what about say now, okay, the jungles of Central America, South America, when you're dealing with water and stuff like that, are they water resistant boots? Are they pretty good with that?
Yeah. I don't ever remember on the trip my feet being wet.
Wet. So
So
on the opposite side, what about when you're getting up in the cold?
yeah, they're very comfortable.
Okay.
The worst part of them is when you go off on an adventure, you park your bike and you go hiking somewhere and you got this big old boot on.
Oh, I can
So
imagine. Yeah.
I learned to pack my tennis shoes close. Most of the time, I kept my boot on in case I stepped on something or there was something I wasn't expecting. So it protects you very well.
Nice. Nice.
Now so when as a woman looking for adventure boots, you try to look for something that's going to fit your foot, the way you want. But if you want something that's in a women's size or style, then it's going to have pink on it. And I'm not a pink person, so I had to buy the men's boot. But I think they're doing better now at putting more women's clothes out there. The same thing for the adventure gear. So I have Climb. Um, as I went through this process, this was probably one of the most painful parts for me as far as money, because each one of these, I call them monkey suits, costs about $1,500.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I have four
Wow.
because the first one, the one you see in the picture here, when I was riding to Prudhoe Bay, the leg burned on my pipe, so I could have still worn it, but I don't like the colors. Um, there's not a whole lot of good selections for women riders. I would never choose these colors. I look like a fireman. But then I tried another one, which is the Revit, which is the Harley. So it's the competitor to Climb. And this one it's a lot thicker. It's a lot, well, I don't know if it's a lot safer, but the material is safer. But it's so thick that I knew I was going through heat and then cold. So I'd prefer to layer up versus having one thing that was just always going to keep me nice and warm or hot. So I went with the lighter one, which is the Climb. It has more vents on it. And I think you could probably find the same thing with Revit. So I'm not endorsing Climb as the one to get. I think you can do it probably with any of them. But for me, it was having the vents and being able to still stay safe, because I didn't want to ride on roads that I'm not familiar with just a t-shirt on.
Does that suit? Looks like it has the reinforced elbows and shoulders.
Yeah, they have different CE ratings, and they're I don't remember what the CE rating for the Climb one is, but it's right under the one that I have for Revit. So I give away a little bit of the reinforcement on the Climb, but I wasn't just off-roading either. So a lot of this gear is made for you're really going to spend a lot of time off-roading, where I was casually off-roading when necessary. But I layered. So I have that, and then I have a puff jacket that I put underneath, and then I have the what do you call it? The gear you put on underneath that, which is your base layers. And I have 3 base layers. I have a light base layer, which is really thin and for when you're in warm weather, but I always make sure that I wear it. And I have a medium one for when it's cooler. And then I have they're like 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So the 3.0 is for the really cold weather. So I don't wear heated pants. I do have heated jacket. But it has to be really, really cold for me to put my heated jacket on it. So I go with the other layers first. And then you have to peel those off sometimes, right?
Right.
So that's what I did from a adventure gear standpoint. It is confusing when you start, there's so many options out there. So it's really confusing, and it costs a lot of money. What advice I would say for anybody who's doing this is don't go out there and spin first. Try them. If you like them, get what you like. And make sure that it's flexible for whatever conditions you're planning to ride in. The other thing is the inReach. The inReach is I have the big one, so you can get different size ones. You don't have to have inReach. You could have Spot. There's all kinds of different emergency tracking. But what it does is it allows people, I send them a link, and then they can track me wherever I'm at. And that's important because when I'm in the US, I'm using Glimpse or something like that. And you don't always have signal. So the Garmin inReach, I had signal everywhere with that. It also has the big one has a mapping feature. So if I wanted to put my map in there, I could follow that map. Now, I never did that. One, it's too small. 2, I already have my GPS and my Google Maps on my phone. So I never used it for that. For me, it was more of a security, because I also have the MedJet. So, and directions. It says, if I'm in an accident and I can't speak for myself and this button goes off, then take me back to here. And I put any city, Texas, which is not too far out of the realm, right? Because you're going south, and Texas is a bordering state. So,
okay, if you don't mind, you said that's a MedJet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what this MedJet does, it
It's like an
Whatever you
insurance.
put a message in there, and then it translated into whatever language for a person who finds it that can understand.
Yeah, actually, there's two different things. So this thing is an emergency. So it has a button on the side, on the right side. You see, if I
Mm-hmm.
press that button, that instantly signals the people that I have as emergency contacts, as well as the company. I don't know who the company is,
Mm-hmm.
but it tells them that there's an emergency.
Okay. Okay.
Immediately, they'll text me. They'll
Yeah.
call them. They'll text me and ask me if I'm okay. And then based on my response or non-response, then they activate.
I see that as a must-have. When you're doing what that kind of ride, that's a must-have.
Yeah, I agree. What I like about the big one is it gives me the insurance that if everything else fails, I still have a map. And if everything else fails, if I press that button, somebody's going to come looking for me. Now, I may be so far away that it takes a while for them to find me, but they know where I'm at. And then the battery life is really long as well. But I can also, with this one, it's a two-way communicator. So I can say, I'm okay, or whatever else I want to say. Like, if I want to say, I was going to say I'm bleeding or whatever, I can type that in and then the people know. And I'll tell you, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but yeah, I'll talk a little bit about this later when I actually had to use it on the trip. The other thing is this Garmin Zumo XT. This is my favorite toy for the bike. And it's my favorite toy because it's not dependent on the cell service or the Wi-Fi. So I always have connection, but it also has this feature that's called Up Ahead, Cities Ahead. And so it tells me what are the cities. So I can look and say, okay, my next city is going to be, 100 miles or 50 miles, so it gives me an idea of how far between kind of major cities. But it also has a feature that shows me how far it is to my next gas station, my next restaurant, or my next hotel. And then I can click onto it, and then it gives me all of the gas stations. Or if I click onto the restaurants, it'll give me all of the restaurants. So that is on my bike constantly. So I use that primary for looking for gas, as well as mapping, looking for gas, looking for hotels at night, because I didn't prearrange all of my hotels. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I look in the next few slides. I think we have some of the things that I use to plan.
Okay.
But a watch out with the Garmin XT Zumo is before I left, I downloaded the South America maps, but the South America maps don't actually include all of South America. So sometimes you have to buy individual maps, and I couldn't find individual maps in the US, but even before I left the US, I wouldn't have known to look for them until I just didn't have maps while I
Mm-hmm.
was on the road. Like in Ecuador, I didn't have maps. Certain parts of, I think it was Guatemala, I didn't have maps. Certain parts of Peru, I didn't have maps.
And
So
you just bought them locally once you
yeah,
got there.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, that was in Peru
Why couldn't
because
you just buy them online and then upload them?
they don't. Yeah, so I didn't so I did buy it online before I left,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't realize that these were not a part of the South America maps.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
the Garmin South America maps had missing pieces.
Mm. Okay.
So that's key.
Yeah, that's a
It,
detail.
yeah,
That's a detail. Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why I'm really happy that I still had my phone and my Google Maps, because Google Maps is, even when you don't have signal, Google Maps is uh, extremely helpful because you can download your maps offline. So each night before I got on the bike, I would download the next day's route so that I can access it offline. So if I
Okay.
didn't have signal I still knew where I was going, even though I had my Garmin. So that I had them both. So, it gives me, most of the time they matched, but there were times where they were different, and then I'd investigate why they were different and make a decision on what I want to do.
Okay.
But if you are traveling, I would suggest you do not leave without any of these. Those are all very essential to my ride, and I personally would not have felt comfortable leaving the
Huge.
house without
I
them.
don't see any way to get around it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and honestly, I still use most of it when I'm in the U.S. So.
Okay.
But don't go buy 4 adventure gear. Buy one that you like.
Yeah, true,
That's a lot of money.
true. Yeah, only thing I can see that you can get away with. Now, no, you gotta have all that.
Yeah.
Maybe the climb suit, but even then with the terrain and brush, if you're wearing regular clothes or whatever, you're ripping things off and.
I mean, so there were days where, I had like jeans, motorcycle jeans. They
Yeah.
have a little more, they're not nearly as protective as your outer gear, right? But it gives you just a little more
Yeah.
protection, but it's not nearly like your adventure gear. While I was on the ride, when we got on the road, I had my adventure gear. I don't care if it was 110 or 20. My adventure gear was on.
I
So
would
I
have
say
it too.
I mean, and you could do leather.
Mm-hmm.
You would look really weird in South America, all leathered up. But
And we're sitting and talking because and I'm guilty of it, man. So you start thinking South America, you thinking hot all the time. But doing this ride, and I'm sure you're going to discuss it, as we move on into the show. It wasn't always hot. Now, it wasn't always hot. It changes on you. Yeah, that's a big deal. So let's do this real quick, Snacks. I just want to say special thanks to those who are on with us today. D Bell, appreciate you, man. Kim Henry will be doing her show next Sunday. The Hoka, hey. Breezy does it. Thank you, brother. DJ D Ready, thank you. Renee, thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thanks, Breezy Does It, for being on. Thanks for everybody being on with us today. And if you could be so kind to do so, man, reach up and hit the like button, man, so we can keep the algorithms moving along, man. So, hey, if you don't know, today we're with the legendary Snacks, and we're talking about riding the Pan America Highway. We're talking about how do you prepare, how do you execute, and how do you plan for the good, the bad, the ugly. So, hey, that's where we're at. So, Snacks, I'm sorry, I'm going to let you take it back from there.
It's good. It's good. Can you go to the next slide and let's take a look?
Sure can.
So we're still preparing for the adventure. I'm still in the investigation mode. So after all of my investigation, I said, okay, I'm going to have to break this up because I'm still working. So I got a full-time job and a half or two. And I'm not comfortable yet, so I need to practice. So I broke it into 3 major rides. One is Cabo San Lucas. The second was Prudhoe Bay, and then the third one being Ushuaia, Argentina. The reason I did that way is I needed to build confidence that I can